The box felt heavier than it should have, not just with the weight of old photographs and yellowed newspaper clippings, but with the burden of disbelief that had shadowed her grandfather throughout his final years. Amelia Parker stood alone in the dusty attic of her grandfather's modest home in Louisville, Kentucky, holding what might be the last tangible pieces of his legacy. "You won't believe what I found," she whispered to herself, fingers trembling as she lifted a faded photograph from beneath a stack of papers. In it, a young black man with a familiar grin stood beside a lean teenage boxer. The scribbled date on the back read 1960, back when Cassius Clay was just beginning to make waves in the boxing world, years before he would become Muhammad Ali, the greatest of all time. Her grandfather, Thomas Parker, had always claimed he helped train the young Cassius Clay before anyone knew his name. "I saw the greatness in him before the world did," he would say. But no one believed him. Not family, not friends, not the local boxing community. They dismissed his stories as the fabrications of an old man desperate for significance. Amelia's phone vibrated against the wooden floorboards. Her brother Michael's name flashed on the screen. "You still at Grandpa's house?" The real estate agent called again. "We need to get that property listed by next week if we want to pay off his medical debts." Amelia sighed. "I found something, Michael. Photos of Grandpa with Muhammad Ali when he was still Cassius Clay. I think his stories might have been true." "Come on, Amy. Not you too. Grandpa was a night janitor at the community center, not some legendary boxing trainer. We need to focus on reality here. That house is our only asset to cover his outstanding hospital bills and that personal loan he took out. His health insurance coverage wasn't enough, and we're still looking at over $50,000 in medical debt. What if we're wrong about him? What if everything he told us was true? Look, I've got to get back to this client meeting. Some of us are trying to build financial security instead of chasing fairy tales. The mortgage company won't accept old photos as payment." After hanging up, Amelia continued digging through the box, finding more photographs, handwritten training schedules, and a journal filled with detailed observations about young boxers from the Smoketown neighborhood in the late 1950s. At the bottom of the box lay a small, worn business card, "Angelo Dundee, professional boxing trainer." On the back, a handwritten note, "Thanks for everything, Tom." The kid's going places. Angelo Dundee, Muhammad Ali's legendary trainer. Was this proof that her grandfather had known him? Had worked with him? As the afternoon light faded, Amelia made a decision that would change everything. She carefully packed the memorabilia and pulled out her laptop. With determined fingers, she began searching for anyone who might help verify her grandfather's connection to the greatest boxer who ever lived. If this story has made you feel something already, no matter how small, don't leave without giving back. Comment and tell me where you're watching this video from, and subscribe to the channel. 3 weeks later, Amelia sat nervously in the reception area of Pinnacle Sports Management, a high-end agency occupying the top floor of a glass tower in downtown Louisville. Her online research had led her to Howard Mitchell, a retired sports journalist who had covered boxing for 40 years and now worked as a consultant for the firm. The marble-floored lobby screamed luxury, with signed memorabilia from various athletic legends displayed in glass cases. Amelia felt out of place in her teacher's salary clothes, clutching her grandfather's weathered cardboard box to her chest like a shield. "Ms. Parker, Mr. Mitchell will see you now," announced the receptionist, gesturing toward a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Ohio River. Howard Mitchell looked up from his computer, his silver hair catching the morning light. "So you're Thomas Parker's granddaughter," he said, extending a hand. "I got your email about your grandfather possibly having connections to Muhammad Ali's early career." Amelia nodded, carefully placing the box on his sleek desk. Everyone thought he was just making up stories. He died believing no one would ever know the truth. Howard's expression softened. "I've been covering boxing since 1975. If your grandfather was involved with Ali in the early days, I'd like to know about it too." As Amelia spread the photographs across his desk, Howard's professional skepticism gradually gave way to genuine interest. He picked up a particular photo of Thomas standing beside Angelo Dundee and a young Cassius Clay. "This was taken at the Columbia Gym," he murmured, "where Dundee first started working with Ali." He examined the business card with Dundee's handwritten note. "This is definitely Angelo's handwriting. I've seen enough of it over the years to recognize it." Hope fluttered in Amelia's chest. "So you think my grandfather was telling the truth?" Howard leaned back in his executive chair. "It's possible. The timeline fits. Before Angelo Dundee became Ali's primary trainer, there were several local trainers who worked with the young Cassius Clay. Most of them have been forgotten by history." He tapped the journal thoughtfully. "May I keep these for a few days? I have some contacts who might be able to verify some details." "Of course. I just want to know the truth." Amelia hesitated. "My brother and I, we're facing some financial decisions about my grandfather's estate. He left significant medical debt despite his Medicare supplement insurance. The house needs to be sold. But if there's historical value to his connection with Ali," Howard nodded, understanding. "Boxing memorabilia, especially anything connected to Muhammad Ali, can be extremely valuable to the right collector or museum. If we can authenticate your grandfather's involvement, these items could potentially solve your financial concerns. Let me make some calls." As Amelia left the gleaming office building, her phone buzzed with a text from her brother. "Realtor says we can list the house for $200,000. Should cover Grandpa's debts with enough left for that business startup course you've been eyeing." Amelia stared at the message, wondering if they were about to sell off not just a house, but a piece of history that deserved to be remembered. That night, in her small apartment, Amelia couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about her grandfather's stories, how Muhammad Ali would sometimes come to their house for Sunday dinners in the early days, how he had spotted a special quality in the young fighter that others hadn't yet recognized. Stories everyone had dismissed as fantasy. Her phone rang at 6:30 the next morning. Howard Mitchell's voice came through, energized despite the early hour. "Amelia, I need you to come back to my office. I've found something and someone you need to meet." When Amelia arrived at Howard's office later that morning, she found him speaking with an elderly black man in a wheelchair. The man had the weathered look of someone who had spent decades in the boxing world. "Amelia, meet Calvin Washington. He was a cutman for many Louisville fighters in the 50s and 60s, Howard said. Calvin looked up at her with bright, intelligent eyes. "Hey, so you're Tommy Parker's granddaughter," he said, extending a hand that bore the calluses of a lifetime in boxing. "Your grandfather was something special." Amelia's heart skipped. "You knew him?" "Knew him, girl. Your grandfather was one of the sharpest minds in Louisville boxing back then. He had an eye for talent like nobody else. When that skinny kid Cassius Clay walked into the Columbia Gym, Tommy was one of the first to say that boy's going to be champion someday." Howard nodded. Calvin confirmed everything. "Your grandfather was part of the early training team before Angelo Dundee took over full-time. He worked primarily on footwork and defensive techniques, skills Muhammad Ali became famous for." "Why didn't anyone remember him?" Amelia asked, emotion tightening her throat. Calvin sighed. "Boxing's got a way of forgetting the people behind the scenes, especially black trainers in those days. When Ali became world champion, the spotlight focused on Dundee and the Louisville sponsoring group. The early trainers like your grandfather faded into the background." Howard pulled out a folder. "I've been making calls all night. I found mentions of your grandfather in some archived interviews with Angelo Dundee. Not prominent mentions, but enough to corroborate his involvement. And there's more." He slid a letter across the desk. It was on Muhammad Ali Center letterhead. "The Ali family is interested in your grandfather's memorabilia for their collection. They've invited you to meet with them at the center tomorrow. This could lead to a significant acquisition offer." Amelia stared at the letter, tears welling in her eyes. He was telling the truth all along. "There's one more thing," Calvin said, reaching into his jacket pocket. "I've been holding on to this for decades. Tommy gave it to me for safekeeping before he moved to that smaller house in the 80s. He handed her a small velvet box. Inside was a gold pocket watch. Engraved on the back were the words, "To Tom, You helped make me. Thank you. Muhammad Ali, 1964. Ali gave this to your grandfather after he won the world championship from Sonny Liston, Calvin explained. Tommy was so proud of it, said it meant more than any money he could have made in boxing. Amelia held the watch in trembling hands, feeling the weight of validation. Her grandfather hadn't been delusional. He had been part of something historic, something legendary. As she left Howard's office with the promise to meet again the next day at the Muhammad Ali Center, Amelia called her brother. Michael, we need to talk about Grandpa's house. I don't think we should sell it yet. Amelia, we've been through this. We need the money to cover his debts and secure our financial future. The mortgage refinance offer won't wait forever. But what if our financial future is tied to preserving his legacy? The Muhammad Ali Center is interested in his memorabilia. This could change everything. There was silence on the other end. Then, you found actual proof that Grandpa knew Muhammad Ali? More than knew him, he helped train him. And I'm meeting with the Ali family tomorrow. The Muhammad Ali Center stood as a monument to the boxer's extraordinary life and impact, its unique architecture catching the morning light as Amelia approached. Inside, she was greeted by Rashida Ali, one of Muhammad Ali's daughters, who had flown in specifically for this meeting. Thank you for bringing your grandfather's story to our attention, Rashida said warmly, shaking Amelia's hand. We're always learning new things about my father's journey and the people who helped shape him. In a private conference room overlooking the Ohio River, Amelia carefully laid out her grandfather's photographs, journal, and the precious pocket watch. Rashida examined each item with reverent interest, occasionally sharing stories about her father's early boxing days. My father always said he owed his success to many hands, Rashida explained. Some well-known, others forgotten by history. From what Howard Mitchell has verified, your grandfather played a significant role in developing the defensive style that made my father so unique. A curator from the center methodically documented each item, treating them with the care reserved for precious artifacts. These fill an important gap in our historical collection, he commented. The early training years in Louisville are less documented than his championship period. As they talked, the conference room door opened, and an elderly man in a wheelchair was guided in by an assistant. Though time and illness had taken their toll, there was no mistaking the presence of Muhammad Ali himself. Now in his 80s and severely limited by advanced Parkinson's disease, the greatest of all time still commanded attention simply by entering a room. Amelia's breath caught. Despite knowing this meeting was possible, seeing the legend in person, especially in connection to her grandfather, overwhelmed her. Rashida smiled at her father, then at Amelia. Dad wanted to be here personally when he heard about Thomas Parker's collection. His memory has good days and difficult days, but when I mentioned Tom Parker, he insisted on coming. Muhammad Ali's eyes moved slowly to the items on the table, lingering on the gold pocket watch. With trembling hands, he reached for it, and his assistant helped him hold it. A faint smile crossed his face. He remembers, Rashida said softly. Dad, is this from Tom Parker, the trainer who worked on your footwork? Ali nodded slowly, deliberately. With great effort, he whispered a single word that Amelia would treasure forever. Friend. Tears streamed down Amelia's face. In that moment, decades of disbelief washed away. Her grandfather had stood in the light of greatness, had contributed to the legend of Muhammad Ali, and now, finally, that truth was acknowledged. After careful negotiation, the Muhammad Ali Center made an offer to acquire Thomas Parker's collection for their permanent exhibition, $100,000, with the promise that Thomas Parker would be properly credited in the Ali story. Additionally, they offered to host a special exhibition highlighting the forgotten trainers of Louisville who had contributed to Ali's early development, with Thomas Parker featured prominently. As Amelia left the meeting, her phone rang. It was Michael. How did it go? He asked, his voice tense with anticipation. They've offered $100,000 for Grandpa's collection, she replied, still processing the emotional weight of the day. And Muhammad Ali himself was there. He remembered Grandpa, Michael, called him friend. The silence on the other end spoke volumes. Then, I should have believed him. We all should have. It's not too late to honor him properly, Amelia said. With this money, we can pay off his medical debt and still keep his house. We could turn it into a small museum about the forgotten trainers of Louisville boxing. An educational center for kids from the neighborhood. You always did think bigger than me, Michael admitted. But you're right. Grandpa deserves to be remembered. And maybe we could set up a scholarship fund with part of the money for kids who want to get into sports management or athletic training. 1 month later, Amelia stood before a small crowd gathered at the Muhammad Ali Center for the opening of a new exhibition, The Forgotten Cornermen, Louisville's Boxing Trainers. Her grandfather's photographs, journal, and memorabilia, including the gold pocket watch, were displayed prominently, alongside newly discovered materials about other trainers from the same era. As visitors moved through the exhibition, Amelia overheard their murmurs of appreciation and surprise at learning these untold stories. A group of teenagers from a local community center listened intently as Howard Mitchell, now working as a volunteer guide, explained how Thomas Parker had helped develop the float-like-a-butterfly footwork that became Ali's signature. Among the attendees was Calvin Washington, who had brought several other elderly members of Louisville's boxing community to witness this recognition of their era. Tommy would be proud, he told Amelia. Not just of the recognition, but of you, for believing in him when no one else would. Later that evening, in the quiet of her grandfather's house, now being renovated into the Thomas Parker Boxing Heritage Center, Amelia sat in his old armchair, looking at the one photograph she had kept for herself, her grandfather and Muhammad Ali, arms around each other's shoulders, both grinning with the confidence of men who knew their worth, regardless of whether the world recognized it yet. On the back, in her grandfather's handwriting, "Me and the kid. He's going to shock the world someday, and I'll know I was part of it." Some legends aren't written in headlines or championship belts. Some live quietly in the skills they pass on to others, in the potential they nurture, in the dreams they help build. Thomas Parker had been such a legend, not famous, but foundational. And now, finally, the world would know. If you made it this far, and felt every word, don't leave without subscribing. I tell these stories with my heart in my hand, to reach people like you, who feel, who get emotional, who live. If this truly touched you, give back. Comment. Subscribe. Come be part of this family with me until the next video.